Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. So in today's video, I'm going over the upcoming Tuesday elections in the state of Alaska. There are three very important primaries taking place in the state of Alaska that I want to talk about for you in today's video. The primaries are going to be in the U.S. Senate race in Alaska, the U.S. House at-large race, and the Alaska governor's race, all of which are considered to be very competitive in this 2026 midterm election cycle, and I want to talk about them here for you today. So in the U.S. Senate race, Dan Sullivan, their incumbent Republican, is running again. He's facing a lot of candidates that are running on this ballot. The most notable candidate is Mary Peltola, the former Democratic Congresswoman from the state of Alaska, that has made this a very, very competitive race. So first things first, there's a few things to watch for in the state of Alaska, though. One of which being the prospect of Dan Sullivan, who's the U.S. Senator Dan S. Sullivan. There's another Republican on the list, Daniel J. Sullivan Jr., a Republican who has no relation to the incumbent, but is running as someone essentially that could split votes away from Dan Sullivan on the ballot. So the way this is going to work in Alaska is the primary will take place. The top four candidates from the nonpartisan primary, meaning all the Republicans, Democrats, and what other candidates are all on the same ballot. The top four vote getters will then advance to the general election and will be included in or conducted in a ranked choice voting process if no candidate breaks 50% of the vote on election night in the first ballot, which odds are pretty good between Dan Sullivan and Mary Peltola. Should be a very close race. We're probably not going to see all four candidates. We're not going to see one break 50% of the vote on election night 2026, especially if Daniel J. Sullivan advances into the top four. There's a good chance we're not going to see anyone break 50%. But this is going to be a very close Senate race, and the general election we know is very important between Mary Peltola and Dan Sullivan. In terms of what we know so far heading into it, Mary Peltola has raised a lot of money, roughly $18.5 million. Dan Sullivan's raised a lot as well, $11.73 million. Very, very close race. The only poll we have in terms of primary poll came from Alaska Survey Research's poll back in March, which showed Peltola around 46%, Sullivan around 41%, then James Ryan getting 3%, Sid Hill getting 3%, and a bunch of the other candidates down ballot getting 2% or less. In terms of how this is going to go, we know Mary Peltola is going to advance to the general. We know Dan Sullivan's going to advance to the general. The question will be ultimately, what I'm watching for, is does Daniel J. Sullivan Jr. advance to the general as well? And if he does, is that enough to potentially take some votes away from Dan Sullivan, the U.S. Senator, and maybe giving a slight edge to Mary Peltola, enough for her really to potentially flip this seat? So the top four candidates advanced. There are a lot of candidates. The two most notable are Dan S. Sullivan and Mary Peltola, and then all eyes are on Daniel J. Sullivan Jr. after that to see if he can get into the top four. If he does, the odds of Dan Sullivan, the U.S. Senator, breaking 50% on election day go down drastically if he advances. If enough voters, even though Sullivan should be marked as the incumbent on the ballot, likely a few voters may not notice the difference and may select him anyway, so that could potentially give Peltola an added boost in this election. But for this primary, all eyes are on the two Dan Sullivans and Mary Peltola. Who the fourth candidate will be after that really is anyone's guess. In terms of the general election then, I mean, look at it. You really can't get any closer than this. All the rankings except for one have it listed as a toss-up, so a very close race here. The polling data across the race to the White House average and the Silver Bulletin average has Mary Peltola up 0.5%, 47.9 to 47.4, with a new poll that came out just a few days ago from Alaska Survey Research showing Peltola up 51 to 49, a very, very close race in the state of Alaska that is definitely going to come down to the wire in the general election. So for this primary, in terms of Peltola and Sullivan advancing, it's really more of like a formality. We know they're going to advance to the general election, and then from there, all bets are off how it's going to end up going. But still, very important race to watch for, Peltola versus Sullivan in the state of Alaska. So that's the Alaska U.S. Senate race. Now we can go to the governor's race in the state of Alaska that is taking place on election night as well. And this is also a very important one. Not only are the Democrats looking to flip the Senate race in Alaska, they're looking to flip the Democratic race as well, as there are a lot of Republicans running, and it seems the Republicans thus far have not really consolidated behind one candidate, far from it, with lots of candidates running in this race. I think we can see here on the Decision Desk HQ website here, there's over 17 candidates running. A lot of them are Republican candidates. There's a handful of Democratic candidates, and also Bill Walker, the former governor of Alaska, is also running. So a lot of candidates are running. Republicans, there's Click Bishop, Dave Bronson, Edna DeVries, Adam Crum, Shelley Hughes, Lisa McGuire, Treg Taylor, Bernadette Wilson. A lot of Republicans running. There's going to be a ton of votes split. The Lieutenant Governor, Nancy Dahlstrom, was running but dropped out of the race. And you can just see here from the money, Matt Halala has the lead right now in terms of fundraising over the rest of the Republicans. I don't know if there's been any just Republican polling not done yet, but there will be the primary election polling we can get to in one moment. On the Democratic side, there are two notable Democrats running. Tom Begich is I would say the most notable. He's the former minority leader of the Alaska Senate from 2019 to 2023. And he's also the uncle of U.S. Representative Nick Begich, who we're going to be talking about in just a few minutes as well. And then Jonathan Kreiss-Tomkins is also running, another Democratic candidate. Begich certainly seems to be the most likely Democrat to potentially end up winning this election if he does. Independents, there are three independent candidates that are running. Most notable, Bill Walker, the former governor of the state of Alaska from 2014 to 2018, is running for this race again. He was a candidate for governor in 2010 and 2022. So him advancing into the top four, maybe the general election, could play a very interesting role in how this all plays out with ranked choice voting as well. As you could have a Republican, Democrat, Independent, and then maybe another Republican, maybe another Democrat. Have to wait and see how that all plays out. Let's see here in terms of the overall polling here. The most recent poll we have is from the Democratic pollster Change Research, which is sponsoring Kreiss-Tomkins' campaign. And they found that Begich has 17%, Kreiss-Tomkins has 15%, Bernadette Wilson has 14%, and Bill Walker has 7%, with Dave Bronson and Click Bishop just barely behind Bill Walker for fourth place there, with still 27% of the vote undecided in this one. The Alaska Survey Research poll from the end of June, beginning of July, found that Begich had 20% of the vote, Bronson had 11, Kreiss-Tomkins had 12, and Bernadette Wilson had 15, with Bill Walker in this poll getting 9% of the vote. So just based off of those last two polls, the way it's currently looking right now is Tom Begich will likely be one of the Democrats for sure. Bernadette Wilson will likely be one of the Republicans for sure. And then you're going to have Dave Bronson, Jonathan Kreiss-Tomkins, Bill Walker, and Click Bishop all fighting for the last two spots. There's enough undecided vote with 25% of the vote left undecided according to the polling. That's really anyone's guess who the top four are going to be. But I'd be pretty stunned if Tom Begich was certainly not in the top four. I think Bernadette Wilson will also be in the top four. And then from there, we're going to have to wait and see if Dave Bronson's polling data comes to fruition, if Jonathan Kreiss-Tomkins come to fruition, or if Bill Walker can get enough support to advance as well. Is really anyone's guess here, but definitely expect Begich and Bernadette Wilson to be in the top four. And then for the general election as well, rankings are split. A handful have it likely. A couple of them have it as toss-up. A poll from the Alaska Survey Research from July down here had Begich on the first round, tied with Bernadette Wilson, Click Bishop, Dave Bronson, Kreiss-Tomkins, and Bill Walker, all there. Then ranked choice voting commences until it comes down to two candidates. Ends up being Tom Begich and Bernadette Wilson, like with the Senate poll, 51-49 for Begich over Wilson. So another very close race. The Democrats are hoping to flip. Going to be very, very close. Have to wait and see how the primary ends up playing out here. And that poll included Bill Walker. This one from April did not. It showed Begich versus Bernadette Wilson going to ranked choice voting, and then Begich ended up winning by 8. So it seems that the Republicans have narrowed down this race as time's getting closer to Election Day. So again, for election predictions purposes, we're going to wait and see how this primary plays out. But I'm expecting Tom Begich and Bernadette Wilson will for sure be in the top four. And then I think you're going to see either Kreiss-Tomkins, Walker, and Bronson. 2 out of those 3 are going to advance. The question is going to be one of them is going to narrowly miss out. Will it be Bronson, Kreiss-Tomkins, or Bill Walker? I think it's more likely we see Kreiss-Tomkins get in the top 3 and one of Bronson or Walker are the ones on the outs, but we'll have to see on election night how that plays out. So that is the governor's race in the state of Alaska, and the last one we have to talk about is the House District at Large for the state of Alaska that will be taking place in the primary as well here. Let's see, we can scroll down to Alaska, go a little quicker here. This is U.S. Representative Nick Begich, who won his first term for Congress back in 2024, where he narrowly defeated Mary Peltola in this race. So very close race. He's running for a second term here. There are a ton of candidates that are running in this race, lots of independents, lots of Democrats. The most notable Democrat by Wikipedia standards in terms of name ID is Eric Hafner here. A lot of this is going to end up being polling data and who ends up getting into the top 4 here. Begich is likely going to end up being the only notable Republican candidate in this race, though there are a good number of independent and Democratic support for the candidates here. Bill Hill, the independent candidate, seems to be the most notable challenger from an independent in this race. Democrat Matt Schultz was in the race at 32%, though I do believe he has officially withdrew from the race. Matt Schultz, yes, he's withdrawn, will appear on the ballot, but he has endorsed Hill. So unless he somehow finds his way into the top 4, Bill Hill seems to be the most notable challenger to Nick Begich thus far in this election. Likely Republican to lean Republican from most of the pollster rankings here. The only polls of 2 from Tavern Research and Public Policy Polling, both of which are Democratic pollsters, and one of which was sponsored by Hill's campaign. They showed a competitive race, though. They showed under 5 points in both matchups. The question will be ultimately, are these internal polls propping up the independent Democratic line candidate Bill Hill? Will that end up coming to fruition? Will Nick Begich win by more than that? We'll have to wait and see for the general election, obviously, but in a primary election where there's a lot of candidates running, got to assume Bill Hill and Nick Begich will advance. The question will be who will be the remainder Democratic or Republican or independent candidates from there. Really still TBD. Alaska is a very interesting state in that it voted for Donald Trump in 2024 by 13.1%. In 2020, it voted for Trump by 10 points, but it's a state that's more open to electing non-Republican candidates down ballot. The Senate race, 2022, voted for Lisa Murkowski, who's probably the most, I would say, moderate Republican in the U.S. Senate by 7.4%. It reelected her against the Republican Trump-backed Kelly Tshibaka. In 2020, Dan Sullivan did win by 12.7%, but not too long ago, it used to have a Democratic senator, and I believe this is Mark Begich, where Dan Sullivan defeated him in 2014. So not really, even though it was 12 years ago now, 2014, not that long ago when you think about it, that Alaska did have a Democratic senator, and it just had Democratic Congresswoman Mary Peltola, who won her seat in a special election in 2022, then was reelected against Sarah Palin a few months later by 9.9% in 2022, and then she narrowly lost re-election to Nick Begich by about 2 points in 2024. Obviously a very great year for President Trump and the Republicans, but she still only lost by about 2 points on that same ballot where Trump won the state by about 13. So with Mary Peltola running in the Senate race, Tom Begich running in the governor's race, and a strong independent candidate in Bill Hill running in the House race, there's a real prospect the Democrats may be able to have a little bit of a resurgence in the state of Alaska in 2026, especially if things continue to bottom out for the Republicans and President Trump heading into the midterms. So in terms of the predictions for each of these races here, for the Senate race, I'll make it real simple. Dan Sullivan, Mary Peltola will be for sure advancing to the general. I think there's a very good chance that the other Dan Sullivan will be advancing as well. From there, for the fourth candidate, really anyone's guess. I would imagine between Peltola or Sullivan, who gets more of the vote. I would say Peltola probably ends up finishing first over Dan Sullivan, even though Sullivan's the incumbent. In terms of the overall vote numbers, seems to be more Republican candidates running that will be splitting the vote, including the other Dan Sullivan. So I think Peltola will get more votes than Sullivan. It's like a show of force from the Alaska Democrats that they're united behind her. So I think Sullivan will finish second, Peltola will finish first, and then Dan Sullivan, the other one, will finish third. On the governor side of things as well, I think we'll see something similar where we'll see Tom Begich finish in first place. I think we may even see Jonathan Kreiss-Tomkins finish in second as there more Democratic support consolidated behind those two. Then you'll see Bernadette Wilson finish either second or third for the Republicans. And then you're going to see Dave Bronson or Bill Walker fight it out for the final spot, where I actually think Bill Walker will narrowly edge out Dave Bronson and get in that final spot where will be one Republican, 2 Democrats, and 1 independent, and the top 4 primary for the general. For the U.S. House at large, obviously Nick Begich will be making it in the top 4. We're going to see independent, nonpartisan Bill Hill get in the top 4 as well. That's 2. And then from there, I mean, it's anyone's guess. It's possible Matt Schultz, with his name still being on the ballot, even though he dropped out, he may even get into the top 3 or 4 as well. From there, though, down ballot, truthfully, no clue who is going to be next after that. But Begich and Bill Hill will be in the top 2. That's all I have for you in today's video in terms of what's going to be happening out of the state of Alaska. I've also done other recap videos for the governor and Senate primaries in the state of Florida. Make sure to go check those out as well if you're interested. But Alaska, once these primaries are set, we're not going to have winners per se because it's going to be top 4 and they go to the ballot in the general election. But this is going to be very big as the general election is officially on once these primaries are concluded in the state of Alaska. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did, and I hope to see you in a future video. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, I really appreciate it if you could hit like and hit subscribe as well. It would really help me and my channel out a whole lot if you could do that for me. You can see in the circle in the top left the subscribe here button to subscribe to the channel. On the right, there are going to be two video pop-ups for you. My latest video will be on the top, and a recommended playlist by myself will be on the bottom as well. In the bottom left of the screen, you'll see my channel name, Anthony's Election Center, which you are currently watching. On my Facebook, Anthony.ElectionCenter is also there. And if you want to reach out to me on email, anthpredicts@gmail.com is my email. Feel free to pause the video if you need to. If you want to look for any of these, obviously in more time, please feel free. But for now, though, that is it. I really thank you all for watching and hope to see you in a future video.